The Luftwaffe's assessment of the Blitz on Coventry on the 14th of November 1940 was that it was an astonishing technological achievement. The chief Nazi propagandist, Joseph Goebbels, was so delighted with the raid he coined a new word, to coventrate. It was not long, however, before the taste of total victory turned sour. The production of aero engines and aircraft parts was quickly shifted to shadow factories. Capacity had only been dented, not destroyed. Within months, factories were back to full production. It has taken Israel's high command just 12 days to see that total victory they claimed to have achieved in the first hours of their blitz on Iran turn something that looks much more like a strategic defeat. This 12-day war ended with none of Israel's 3 war aims being met. Trump's claim that Iran's nuclear enrichment program had been completely and fully obliterated has within a day been flatly contradicted by the intelligence arm of the Pentagon, who sent in the B-2 bombers. The Defense Intelligence Agency found in a preliminary assessment that the US military strikes on the 3 of Iran's nuclear facilities did not destroy the core components of Tehran's nuclear program and only set it back a matter of months, according to leaks published in the CNN and the New York Times. It said the bunker-busting bombs closed the tunnels but may not have hit the chambers underneath one of the complex's Fordow, containing the uranium spinning centrifuges, and no one had accounted for 400 kilograms of highly enriched uranium. Independently, we know that Iran had time to move its centrifuges and the HEU out of harm's way, and that its atomic energy chief had already signaled Iran had built another deeper set of bunkers in a mountain elsewhere. In other words, Iranians could already have behaved exactly the way wartime Britain did when Coventry was hit, to disperse manufacturing, which was key to the war effort. The second Israeli war aim was the total destruction of Iran's ballistic missile fleet. Self-evidently, that has not been destroyed either, because in the hours after Trump's announcement of a ceasefire, it sent further waves of missiles, killing 4 Israelis in Beersheba. Israel sustained more damage from Iran's missiles in 12 days than it did from 2 years of Hamas's homegrown rockets, or indeed months of war with Hezbollah. Strategic targets have been hit, including an oil refinery, a power station, and a research center. Iran has also claimed strikes on Israel's military facilities, although Israel's strict censorship regime makes these assertions difficult to verify. In 12 days, Israeli crews have come to grips with the sort of damage to apartment blocks that before only Israeli planes had inflicted on Gaza and Lebanon, and it came as something of a shock. And finally, the Iranian regime is still standing. If anything, the nation has rallied round it out of fury at Israel and America's trickery and unprovoked aggression. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's other great achievement, dragging the US into a war, now looks like a poisoned chalice. For how much longer will that banner, "Thank you, Mr. President," be up on a central highway in Tel Aviv after Trump applied a massive and premature handbrake on Netanyahu's war machine? Trump began the war by refuting any US involvement in Israel's surprise attack on Iran. When he saw it was succeeding, Trump tried to muscle in, saying it could only have been achieved with US technology. As the attack wore on, Trump suggested that he too would not be opposed to regime change. But in the final 24 hours, Trump lurched from demanding Iran's unconditional surrender to thanking Iran for warning the US of its intentions to strike Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar and declaring peace in our time. Far from turbocharging ambitions to grind Iran into a Gaza-grade dust, Trump just called time on a war that had only just started. And unlike in Gaza, Netanyahu is in no position to defy the will of the US president, as we all saw on Tuesday, when Trump used megaphone diplomacy to stop Israeli pilots from continuing their bombardment. No Democrat president has ever talked publicly to Israel in this language before. Trump wanted his tour of triumph that he's going to have in The Hague in NATO, and was not going to let Netanyahu spoil it. Iran, on the other hand, is emerging from this conflict with strategic gains, although the immediate battering it has sustained and the hundreds of casualties it has suffered should not be underestimated. Its air defenses failed to bring down a single Israeli warplane, although they appeared to have downed drones. Israeli warplanes were free to roam the skies of Iran, and its intelligence had penetrated deep into the Revolutionary Guard Corps and the Iranian scientific community. These were all clear failings, but none proved decisive. In the end, all Iran had to do was, in the words of the 1940s era Britain, keep calm and carry on. That meant sending a steady stream of missiles towards Israel, knowing that even if all were knocked out of the sky, the entire population was penned up in shelters, and Israel's precious and expensive supply of Arrow missiles was being steadily consumed. What Iran thus established was exactly what the Israeli economy could not tolerate after 20 months of conflict, a war of attrition on a second front. Netanyahu needed a quick knockout, and despite the initial shock and awe, it never came. For in the end, this conflict was never about ending a nuclear bomb program that had never existed in the first place. If it had, Iran would have had long ago been able to build a bomb. This conflict was about a war of two narratives. The first goes like this. The Hamas attack on the 7th of October 2023 was a strategic mistake. No force that Arabs or Iranians can muster can ever match the power of Israel and the US combined, or even Israel armed with the latest generation of weapons. Israel will always defeat its enemies on the battlefield, as it did in 1948, 1967, 1973, 1978 and 1982. The only option for Arabs is to recognize Israel on its terms, which means to trade with it and leave Palestinian statehood for another day. This view is held with various variations and unofficially by all the Arab leaders and their military and security chiefs. The alternative narrative is that while the state of Israel exists in its current form, there can be no peace. It is the state of Israel that is the source of the conflict, as opposed to the presence of Jews in Palestine. Resistance to occupation will always exist, no matter who takes up or puts down the cudgel, as long as that occupation continues. Iran's existence as a regime that defies the Israeli will to dominate is more important than its strategic rocket force. Its ability to stand up to Israel and the US and to keep fighting shows the same spirit that Palestinians in Gaza have shown in refusing to be starved into surrender. Iran's position as it contemplates a post-war round of talks with the US can only have strengthened. Firstly, Iran is entitled to have a guarantee from the Americans not to walk away from the talks again, as they have done twice before. Once when Trump withdrew from the Iran nuclear deal in May 2018, and again this month when the envoy Steve Witkoff was directly engaged in talks with the Iranians. According to informed sources, Witkoff and Iranians were discussing something that looked suspiciously like the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action that Trump had walked away from all those years ago. There are other options. As I and others have argued, being part of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, the NPT, served Iran's interests poorly. It could walk away from the treaty, having every incentive now to develop a nuclear bomb to stop Israel from ever doing this again. But in reality, Iran does not have to do anything immediately. It has weathered maximum pressure sanctions and a 12-day Armageddon with the latest US weaponry in use. It does not need an agreement, because the last one negotiated with the former US President Barack Obama did not lead to sanction relief. This is not likely either this time, because whatever Trump says or does, it needs a 2/3 majority in Congress to pass it. In the meantime, Iran can rebuild and repair the damage it has sustained in these attacks, and if past experience is anything to go by, it will emerge stronger than before. For Israel, the balance sheet of 12 days of war is decidedly mixed. Yes, it has shown its fist can extend to 1,200 kilometers and beyond, but no, Israel is not a regional military hegemon and cannot dictate the future shape of the Middle East. The price it has had to pay is high. It has swapped Hamas's homegrown rockets for Iran's ballistic missiles. It has swapped an indirect enemy who uses proxies for a direct one, which has now no hesitation in keeping the entire population of Israel in its bunkers. Netanyahu's lifelong dream of slaying the Iranian dragon may have proved to be a bridge too far.